So we're going to be springboarding this tier list with the House of Fata Morgana, which is this rich, dense, erratic, character-driven story replete with rich characterization that just suffuses the entire visual novel, wherein every erratic, unpredictable character thread just coalesces and conjoins with this beautiful gothic fantasy tapestry of horrific tragedy. And the atmosphere in this visual novel is just drenched in this medieval gothic allure, which is further accentuated by this amazing, surreal, dreamlike lo-fi soundtrack and the amazing, stellar, superlative artwork. This is probably the visual novel on this list with the most literary merit. This story reads like Edgar Allan Poe meets Fyodor Dostoevsky meets H.P. Lovecraft meets the Bronte sisters with regard to Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre. This visual novel is just such a interesting, creatively interesting mashup of so many different genres and themes. Personally speaking, subjectively speaking, it doesn't really grip me. It doesn't really speak to me as some other visual novels on this list. I'm going to put it in high A tier. I think I'm just going to do Steins Gate next. And Steins Gate, when it comes to pure, raw, conceptual creativity, it is the epitome of that. It has such an intricate, watertight time travel storyline with very little plot holes, very little threads left unwoven. There's no loose ends. Everything happens for a reason. And with that being said, and how just complex Steins Gate's story is, it is literally awe-inspiring. The impressive factor when it comes to that is beyond reproach. It is genuinely awe-inspiring, especially given the fact that there's just so much humming underneath the hood in this visual novel when you're reading it, while simultaneously the writers are literally pulling the rabbits out of the hat in front of you while you're playing the game, and you just get completely blindsided by the ingenious fucking writing. I think what separates a truly great story from a good story is just like the layers and layers and layers of stuff that's happening in the background that are just forming the entire ending and the entire narrative that you just are not aware of, or you're just kind of tangentially aware of. I think it's paramount for gripping storytelling. And as a result, Steins Gate is like this rich jazz piece where each instrument sounds kind of listless and weird on their own, but when you listen to all the instrumentation together, it forms this very, very rich harmony. And I think Steins Gate is emblematic of that. Except for Steins Gate's case, where each individual instrument can kind of just like stand on its own, while simultaneously each individual instrument is like converging on this great, amazing crescendo. Really mesmerizing just how closed the ending and the beginning is in this visual novel. It's crazy. It's just so satisfying from a writing perspective, just how full circle everything is. And from a story experiential reader perspective, it is just as satisfying. And on top of that, this visual novel has one of the best main protagonists with some of the greatest characterization ever. This main protagonist goes through one of the most harrowing, thought-provoking and emotionally profound journeys of all time. Okabe Rentaro basically becomes the loneliest man in the universe, fighting a war against fate, playing a game of dice against God himself, just for an iota, a scintilla of like hope, and that he saves his friends from their fates. And all this because he accidentally discovered time travel through his very juvenile and petulant delusions of grandeur. And it just, in the unraveling and the fraying of this persona, is just so emotionally poignant to see unfold on screen. Yeah, Okabe Rentaro is always like trying to devise machinations, and he accidentally stumbles upon like the holy grail of all machinations, and it just eats him alive in the most psychologically disturbing way possible, to be honest. And he gets presented by this emotionally devastating dichotomy moral dilemma, and it is just so fucking crazy. Kabe is an amazing character. He's just an amazing, unique personality, and he simultaneously brings up all the characters around him. It makes what seems to be very tropey, one-dimensional characters and just brings so much life into them. He's just a force that just brings so much characterization throughout his entire visual novel, through his banter, through his like little antics. He's just an amazing character. And He's one of the most emotionally deep characters that I have seen. While this lacework of science fiction sublimeness is being woven, it all is taking place in some random kid's fucking apartment above a CRT shop. Visual takes what seems to be a molehill and turns it into a mountain in terms of its sheer grandeur. I always love these stories that can take rather innocuous settings and just turn them into something huge and magnificent. You know, like with Dune, with Frank Herbert, with Arrakis, just a full-on desert planet. And it turns into this huge sci-fi epic. With Steins Gate, they turn a kid's apartment with a microwave into this amazing, thought-provoking, larger-than-life story. And I think it's a testament to the writer's creativity. Moreover, this visual novel is compounded with just some idiosyncratic internet/image board culture. And a lot of characters are emblematic of, like, it's like the story basically is like, what if a bunch of terminally online 4chaners/Discord users, like, you know, actually went outside for once and formed a clique and accidentally stumbled upon time travel. Like, it just gives the visual novel so much personality and discernibility, especially given just how autistic and kind of just socially inept the characters are. Like, unironically, Steins Gate is one of the best science fiction stories I've ever seen, I've ever read. It is just one of the few anime/VNs that actually pushes like an entire genre, irrespective of the medium that it's in. It is so creative, just so ingenious, and just so unique. It is just truly spectacular. Steins Gate, it's S tier. So next we have Mother Alternative. Mother Alternative is just so fucking bloated. And so much terrible exposition and pacing issues. A lot of the action scenes and the theatrics in the story are just so pulpy and just so over the top and lame. Yeah, a lot of Mud Love Alternative story is just overly sensational and melodramatic and not in a good way. I don't think Mud Love Alternative has aged particularly well. It may be a 2006 9 out of 10, but it is not a 2025 9 out of 10. I generally believe that unanimous worship for this visual novel is just a vestige of the past, and people do it principally out of culture because it's like, I don't know, it's like sacrilege to do so, and there's like this taboo. But I do think it's about time we turn the page and just realize the Mel Alternative, it just hasn't aged well. There's been so much better stuff that has come out. And yeah, this visual novel also has some really weak characterization in terms of the main characters. A lot of the characters are just like truly one-dimensional, whereas Steins Gate does have one-dimensional characters, but they are kind of, I don't know, instrumental to the plot and to the emotional, compelling nature of that plot. A lot of the characters in Mother Alternative and Mother Love Trilogy are just so one-dimensional and so boring and don't really serve anything in the story. They're just emotional pawns that the writer uses to solicit a emotional reaction from you. And the way the writer puts these emotional pawns on the chessboard is just so trite and so predictable. Literal 100 ELO chess moves. The story is just extremely predictable from front to end, especially with regard to the character deaths, more so with its ending. Its ending is so trite, so syrupy, sickly sweet, and so fan servicey and so fucking boring. And yeah, this visual novel has a lot of fucking problems. This visual novel has a lot of problems, but it does have some amazing moments. Immediately I think of Takuru's character arc. Immediately I think of Samika's emotional moments in it. Also, I think of some of the cool concepts and ideas like the causality conductor and the beta, notwithstanding the shoehorn tentacle fetish bullshit, are admittedly interesting antagonistic force with some interesting and cool character designs, notwithstanding that fucking stupid just Y laser unit that just looks fucking ridiculous. But like the way that the beta invades planets like viruses and forms these hives on the planet's surfaces, and they've got this pattern learning recognition system where they're this hive mind network that forms like one brain. They only see the world in terms of like materials, and they're like silicone, so they don't really see anything other than silicone as alive. It's just an interesting idea. Also, in conjunction with the idea that they're like the resource extraction underarm of a greater empire. That's just an interesting idea. I really did like the beta's presence, notwithstanding the fucking tentacle scene. Moreover, I do like some of the character ideas, especially with regard to Kasumi. I think she has an interesting character idea and design. Furthermore, I do like some of the other concepts and ideas like the Unit 00 I do like some of the plot twists, some of the twists and turns that the visual novel takes. You know, the chop scene, famously, Samika being the brain of that. There's a lot of eerie, interesting dynamics that brings to the story with regard to Takaru. I do like, holistically speaking, Yoko Sensei's character. I think she's my favorite across the entire trilogy, the entire Love trilogy. But this visual novel is just so meandering and so bloviated and just so overwrought and so artificially elongated. So, I don't know. There's just so much weighing this visual novel down that I cannot, in good faith, put it above. I can put it above C tier because I do think it's above average, but it is still overrated and overhyped. So next we have White Album 2. And White Album 2, I'm going to get a lot of hate for this. Okay, I'm going to preface this by saying this. White Album 2 is definitely the best romance visual novel drama that I've ever read. It's well executed, and it does what it does with flying colors. However, it's conceptually boring. The plot is rather basic, but it does what it does in spades. And Setsuna and Kazusa are some well-written characters. And this love triangle that is the framework whereby this story operates has a lot of verisimilitude, and it feels like it feels real. A lot of the emotional climaxes of the story and the resolutions feel real and genuine. It's just this visual novel feels so natural, despite it being so dramatic and theatrical. Yeah, this visual novel is really good. It's really good. I do think, as a visual novel experience, from a purely reading experience, I think that White Album 2 is definitely better than Love Alternative. Yeah. So we're going to do Steins Gate Zero, which is C tier. Steins Gate Zero, yeah. This visual novel does not add on meaningfully to Steins Gate. It does not do anything that Steins Gate did in a more superb or superlative way. It does actually everything that Steins Gate did, but worse. This visual novel does iron out and really flesh out Okabe's character holistically in a macro sense. The journey, the harrowing, laborious, excruciating journey that Okabe goes through in Steins Gate Zero, just for a younger version of himself to experience the Steins Gate world line, it is beautiful. Admittedly, there's some amazing scenes in this visual novel. There's some amazing, beautiful, Big Chungus 100 soy Reddit scenes that hit so hard. Yeah, and this visual novel just brings so much weight retroactively to the end of Steins Gate, where Okabe Ritaro is talking to himself from the future. It adds so much weight to that scene now, and I think retroactively it makes Steins Gate even better in a way. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of overall, it just reads like a shitty fan fiction with some definite good highlights peppered in, but overall it is shit and average.